Hey everyone, welcome in.
Hello.
Okay, so welcome everybody. For those of you who I don't recognize, we are Center for Book Arts, and we were founded in 1974, and we are the oldest nonprofit dedicated to uplifting and furthering the book arts through education, preservation, exhibition, art making, and community building. So we're here today as part of the Small Press Incubator program, which is an 8-week-long program dedicated to BIPOC writers and poets to help them create their small presses. So today we have a lecture with Christina Long, MFA, who is the Global Creative Director of Black World ZINE. Based in New York City and launched in 2014, the press documents Black women, non-binary, and women of color who participate in heavy music genres like metalcore, hardcore, punk, and more. Along with her sister, Courtney Long, they have also launched the Heavy Girls podcast on Spotify, a Black Girls World music festival, and a streetwear line. Black Girls World has been featured in Vice, Harper's Bazaar, and Penguin the Random House. And today, Christina will be talking about administrative practices for small presses.
Yeah, thank you. I guess we can go ahead and get started. Let me just share screen real quick. And go from the beginning. Everybody can see these slides, I assume. And I think for now, a good place to start, I'll go through some key concepts and things, and then let's hold off on questions until the kind of second half. I'm sure folks have different use cases and different things they're trying to do, so we'll try and have some time to accommodate folks' various needs as far as where they might be on their journey. Yes. So just a quick refresher on Black Girls World so you kind of have an idea of all the things we've kind of gotten mixed into over the last decade. So we've been around for a decade. I run this organization with my younger sister, Courtney. For most of this past decade, we've both lived in different cities and states. So we do a lot of remote work and remote planning with each other. I'm very active here on the East Coast, doing different events and things in the area. My sister kind of traveled around a lot. She was just in Korea last week. But for, for general purposes, she mainly documents the music scenes in the Midwest region of the US. So that's a little bit about kind of how we've been trying to work on things. And we started as a zine, but over the years we've really expanded into other things like curating different types of events, be they like zine fairs or book fairs, as well as lectures, panel talks, and live music festivals, which is one of our favorite things to do, to really just kind of bring all these layers of creative practice together, and see folks engaging with each other along music and publishing at the same time. Yeah, here's some quick screenshots of some past events we've done. The one on the left is at Philadelphia's ICA museum. We did that event in 2019. I think it was called like the Heavy Girls of Heavy Music Festival or something like that. And then on the right hand, we have a panel talk that Courtney and I did earlier this year to celebrate our 10-year anniversary in Chicago at Chicago's Museum of Contemporary Art. So, we get around, we have a podcast that we started mainly around the pandemic, right? When all the venues had closed up and we still wanted to, engage with creatives and musicians about their practice, and, how they were still continuing to make music. And we also have a streetwear line where we started talking about like, well, what about the kind of things we wear at shows, right? Like, we don't just wear anything. We don't just show up looking any kind of way at a show. And so we explored, streetwear, and we do offer, different kinds of things on our website regarding like, how to kind of represent at a show, but also make sure it's like comfortable types of stuff that you could wear like in a mosh pit and stuff like that. We've also branched out into doing partnerships and collaborations with other organizations. So I thought I'd share that too, right? Because that's its own kind of mm, initiative as well. Finding good partners, finding other organizations that you feel like um, you have enough in common with and a good working relationship with to build out each other's initiatives and business and things like that. So in the past year we've done some pretty good work with the Punk Island organization here in the New York City area. And then lastly, we've also been branching out lately into sponsorship. So this is a good example of an organization based out of London in the United Kingdom um, for Decolonize Fest. And it's, like a group of POC punks who are looking for some financial support to put their festival together. So we were able to coordinate with them and help sponsor their event to make sure that, it happened in the way that they were envisioning. So yeah, sponsorships as well is something we've been doing more of the past couple of years. Now, that's just a preface. All these different types of touch points or things that we're doing as a publishing house, I would say for the purposes of today's conversation, we're getting into liability, right? Every time, right, as an artist, creative business, whatever you want to call it, every time you venture out into a new type of space or industry, you are opening yourself up to another layer of liability in the event something goes wrong, a new way to get sued, a new way, a new way to get hurt, right? And so I'm really passionate about making sure creatives are aware of all the different levers available to us to protect ourselves so that we can, get into fashion, and we can get into music publishing or print publishing, and all these different things. Okay, we're going to do a live event. But it's like at the same time, when something goes wrong in all these different situations, how might that impact our business overall or our livelihood? So it's important to make sure we're protecting ourselves. So from what I've just shared, right, of all these different things Black Girls World is currently known for, what I've done in the past decade is really structure it all under a mapping of limited liability companies. So the main company that I own is basically Christina Long Holdings, an umbrella company. And within that company, over these last few years, I've established several additional LLCs that sit under that umbrella. And why would somebody do all of this? Well, as I worked with an attorney to flesh this out, what I came to understand was every time you create some sort of business entity and on the record, it allows you to participate in that space without impacting all the other things that you might own or other things that you might be doing. For example, my Ed Circle business is a consulting firm that I do for digital corporate development things. If somebody were to sue me for a corporate project that didn't work out, or say someone tripped and fell during the course of a contract while we were doing something within this business, if they sued me, they would only be able to go after the one company. They wouldn't be able to receive any funds or receive any awards built from anything else we had created. So the Black Girl Founder business, the Black Girls World business, and the General Holdings Company remain untouched. The other thing that's important about creating these entities is it protects your personal assets. So if somebody were to take you to court, whatever they could potentially receive, it ensures that they can't go after your personal bank accounts, your personal assets. You know, if you own a home or something like that, they could only go after whatever value is sitting in that one LLC. Okay. So that's just like a quick review, but we can come back to this if you have questions. I think a big overarching theme I wanted to share for this conversation is to take your time. Okay, like I don't think any of us could expect a self-employed person or just a creative, a single creative trying to launch something like a small press to have all this stuff figured out on day one. A lot of what I've even shared so far, it really has been 10 years in the making, right? So we did not, when we first came out with Black Girls Wear Zine, no, we did not have an LLC. No, we did not have trademarks. So it really is about, being aware of what's available to you, but putting a plan together for yourself of like, how, taking your time as you go through these different processes and learn about these different processes. But yeah, it's not going to happen overnight, and that's okay too. The idea at the end of the day is to establish some longevity. But that's, it takes time. Okay. So for today, some key things we're going to go over around, just kind of establishing a strong foundation for your new business. In this case, say a small press, um, is some basics about the business structures that are available to you and how they impact taxes. Some considerations around banking, budgeting, and accepting donations, trademarks, e-commerce partnerships, and possibly insurance if we have enough time. But again, you don't have to have all of this established on day one. I mean, you could literally, even from what I've listed here, you could break it down by a year and say, okay, this year I'm gonna work on business structure. Next year I'll work on banking. The third year I'll work on a trademark. I think it really doesn't have to be expedited. And especially when I know most of us have other responsibilities, right? Other jobs, other things we might be doing to take care of ourselves in addition to trying to launch a small press. Mm-hmm. Um, okay, so let's get into like what are these types of business structures that a person could consider. We know we have sole proprietorships, right? That's kind of when you're just kind of operating on your own as an individual. You might charge people for your services or something and just file it as a 1099 when you do your income taxes every spring. Um, but the more active you get, right? Like as far as the more you kind of go out in the world with your press, the more you engage with people and customers, the higher likely it is that you should do a little more than a sole proprietorship to cover yourself so that if something goes wrong, people don't have full access to every dollar tied to your name, with only some dollars, right? So this is where we get into LLCs. You can have a single member LLC where you're the only person tied to that LLC. You own it. You're the only one responsible for it. It doesn't really require too much paperwork. If memory serves, it can still leverage 1099s if I'm not mistaken. And like when you fill out, tax forms and things like that, you can still use your main name. It doesn't really mess up your like income taxes as like a freelancer, you know. But what it does do is when you lead with that, if something should go sideways, you can pull on it and say, you can't just come straight after me. You got to go through the LLC, right? So it gives you a bit of a cushion. The other thing that's really beneficial of having an LLC is it allows you to have an employer identification number. So if down the road you want to hire someone or you want to pay someone for their services, right? Say you hire an attorney or you hire a tax person to help you, you can use your LLC as the function that is managing those types of expenses for you. And that helps later in the tax process to say that, you were doing this and it's part of business expenses, under tax code. Um, and lastly, the other thing I think that is important about having an employer identification number, it's kind of like having a social security number just for your business. It allows you to start creating bank accounts. So once you have an LLC and you have an EIN number, that allows you to then say, okay, I'm going to have a business checking account or a business savings account or a business credit line, which is completely separate from my personal finances. But we'll get into that a little more later. You also have the ability to create a multi-member LLC. Sometimes I've met artists who want to go in on a business together with their friends. So, you can do that too. I don't always recommend it. I think it depends on the situation, right? Because, you know, the idea, right, is whoever you would be getting that intimate with as far as putting a whole business together is, gotta be somebody you trust and you anticipate trusting for many years to come. When these things fall apart, as you can imagine, it can be a little hard to unravel everybody's dealings in the LLC if it's more than just you. Okay. And we also have, the 501c3 nonprofit structure. I get the sense sometimes that creatives assume at times that like whatever creative practice they're trying to put together, it has to be a nonprofit. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it does not. You don't have to do a nonprofit structure, even if you plan on doing a lot of community related things or donating money to a lot of different causes. That does not mean you have to yourself be a nonprofit organization. Traditionally, you go in this direction if you anticipate accepting many donations from other corporations and other organizations. So a 501c3 is going to be critical to how you track the money people give you, and how you're kind of explaining that to the IRS that people are giving you money. Or grants and things. And then, yeah, the last piece too is sometimes through government support, right? Different government programs and grants, it's a requirement that an organization be a 501c3. So every situation is different, but definitely something to keep in mind. Like, you don't have to go this path, even if you plan on doing quite a bit of social entrepreneurship. Okay. The next one is, and then here's some additional ones that you might hear more about these days. I don't feel like these were all that popular before the pandemic, but they're a bit more popular now. You also have the option of setting up a B corporation, which is not a 501c3, but it is kind of like a corporate status with the IRS that allows some level of tax breaks if you share with the IRS every year that your organization is doing these various like positive actions to support social and environmental issues. So sometimes you'll see like, oh, I don't know, like one of those sock companies, right? Isn't there like a well-known sock company where anyone who buys a pair of our socks, we're going to donate a pair of socks to someone else in need. Those types of organizations tend to file as a B Corp, because they're able to consistently show that while they're not a full nonprofit organization, they're doing something that's a bit more social, supporting in some way. And so then in exchange, the IRS allows them to keep a little bit more than their income than the average person. We also have an S Corp, an S Corporation, um, which is a special kind of tax status that you can pursue. And then C Corps, which they all have these different kinds of opportunities as far as how you want to break down and report your income to the IRS. That's all I would say about it for now. Um, I definitely recommend consulting with a tax specialist and like a business attorney on some of these if you have like really deep questions, of course, about the benefits and pros and cons of each type of business entity. The last thing I'd say about it for now, though, that I thought was really important when I first jumped into these is all of these business types, these different structures are flexible. So if you, for some reason, when you kick off your press, decide you want it to be a C Corp and 12 months into it, you're not happy with it, you don't like you don't like the requirements of it, you don't like what it's doing, you have the right at any time to switch back. You can change a C Corp to a 501c3. You can change a 501c3 back into an LLC. So you don't ever have to feel like picking one of these structures is permanent. You do have the right to change them depending on, the progress of your business and kind of what's unfolding before you. Yeah, hope that makes sense. Um, okay, taxes. Yes, taxes. So, like I mentioned, a lot of this kind of business structure stuff goes back to how you're trying to deal with income taxes and the way that you do business. So, just but I do feel like if you do talk to a specialist on some of these things, one of the hangups is people tend to only have certain tax concerns depending on the level of income coming in. So in a lot of cases, like when they say a B Corp setup is going to be beneficial, it's like at what, the $50,000 mark, the $200,000 mark? Like it really varies, like whether or not some of these business structures are gonna be helpful, and also some of these tax suggestions are gonna be helpful. It depends on like how much money is actually coming in. So the self-employment tax right now is at 15.3%, and it only kicks in for any of us. If you have a little online store, doing Etsy, right? Maybe you're selling things on Etsy or selling things on Amazon. It only kicks in if you make more than $400 a year. And once you hit that kind of threshold, the IRS would like to hear from you every spring about their cut of that money, right? I feel like for a lot of, young zine operations here in the city, they might not be bringing in a few $100s a year just yet. It really varies. Maybe some organizations are built, or I don't want to say organizations, presses. Some small presses might be pulling in what, maybe 5,000, 8,000. Like not a lot of money to be worried about as far as the IRS chasing you down. But some of the more mature organizations are really, starting to bring in some significant income where your tax returns and what you're filing as far as your taxes really needs to be tight, or the IRS gonna come after you. I had my own personal experience with that a couple years ago. I'm not gonna get into it now, but yeah, the IRS, they do not play. Okay, they don't play. Okay? Um, and then the other thing to keep in mind too, from what we've listed here, I'm pretty sure, if memory serves, again, don't quote me on this because I'm not a certified tax person. I'm pretty sure for the state of New York, you still have to pay income tax as well. So it's income tax and self-employment tax on top of these things. And again, like if it's just a typical LLC, it doesn't look that different from your typical personal income tax reporting. But as you grow and expand, or if you have people you hire, or just more and more folks kind of coming into your ecosystem, heck yeah, your taxes can start to get a little more complicated. All right. So banking and budgeting time. Banking and budgeting, as I mentioned before, when it comes to like running a small business, we highly recommend, like, for as much as I'm saying here about taxes, one of the best things that's going to help you when you need to report out what your business is doing or not doing, as if you create a dedicated bank account for that business, right? Separate from personal finances. That way you can quickly go into an account and see, here's the latest expenses that, happened with this business. Here's the latest money, the revenue that came in, and that'll be the only information in that account, so that you don't get tripped up with, putting a vacation expense over there, or your Uber Eats over there, and having to come back at the end of the year and figure out what receipts belong in which accounting, kind of file, right? So that's one of the benefits of getting an LLC. If you're not ready yet, I know how it is. If you're not ready yet to establish an LLC or some kind of business, at least create a secondary checking account that's just for your business. Um, but yeah, you got to do something. I've also found that, like, sometimes grant applications, or um, other kind of award applications, competitive applications, where they're looking to donate money to new businesses and things like that. Sometimes in those applications, they require a report out of uh, your annual revenue or your annual expenses. That's a lot quicker to pull if you have a bank account that can just, provide that to you, so you don't have to go digging for that information. I also listed savings here because, heck yeah, saving money on the side to keep your business running is very critical. Even if, again, to me, it doesn't matter if it's a smaller operation where maybe you only make a few $1,000s a year. Even if that's the case, always put at least 25 to 30% of that money aside in some kind of savings account. I'm a big fan of money market accounts because um, those accounts actually pay out some interest. So, I know tradition these days in America, right? You go to Chase Bank, they pretty much laugh at you at the idea of giving you interest on your money. But if you go to a decent bank these days, like Ally Bank, say, um, for a money market account, they actually are paying out at least 4% right now. During the pandemic, some of the money market accounts were paying upwards of 7% annually. So what that means is, the longer you let your money sit in that account, the more the bank pays you for your money being there. And they put money in your account. Yeah. Highly recommend. And then the other thing too about Ally Bank is their money market accounts are also checking accounts. So you can still take the money out quick. It's not like your money has to sit there untouched for a certain amount of time. No, the money's fluid. You have access to it. They just recommend you don't touch it. But if you needed it in a in an emergency, yeah, you have immediate access to it. I've also got here a note about bootstrapping. In the entrepreneurship scene, bootstrapping is the term that we use to refer to, we're only gonna build this business on the money in our pocket, like actual money. So that might be personal money provided to you by family and friends, or in my case, just using a little bit of my day job paycheck here and there to build out things I'm trying to do with my business. I'm a big proponent of this. I don't believe in credit. I don't believe in using credit cards, I don't care what it is, a business credit card, a business loan. Don't do it. I feel like it has to be a very special case for a person to take that kind of risk. Because if you just started this business and you don't know if it's going to be successful, the last thing you want hanging over your head is $30,000 in credit that these companies want paid back, and you don't have it, right? Like you don't need that kind of stress in your life if you just starting out with this initiative. Um, so yeah, it, feel free to let me know at the end of this presentation if you feel like you have a good use case for a credit line. But I'm pretty adamant about you don't need that. Your business will grow at the pace of whatever money you do have access to. The other part to that is revenue. So every time you start a new project, a new book, take the sales from that book, take that revenue, put a little bit of it in a savings account, use the rest of that money to build your business or start your next project. Right? But yeah, don't do no damn credit. Don't need it. And then retirement accounts and healthcare, I've listed here just as an aside that if you are a creative who is trying to like make a full living off of your small press, which is fine if that's what you want to do. Um, because I think a lot of us, have multiple income streams. But if you're trying to pay rent with your small press, I would say sure. There are absolutely special types of retirement accounts and healthcare opportunities for small businesses that have at least an LLC. Again, even if it's a single owner LLC, there tend to be benefits there that are not so much offered to like a regular like freelancer sole proprietor. So it's another benefit of at least having some kind of LLC to present yourself as a more established entity. And then that way some of these companies can provide additional deals to cover these benefits. Um, Before I get into trademarking, are there any questions so far about what I've covered regarding business entities, taxes, or banking? Because that's like the real vegetables of this conversation. Any questions? Put them in the chat, please, if you do have a question. Um, no questions? All right. Um, I'll move on to the next section. If you do end up having questions about this area, that's fine later. All right. Now we're going to jump into. Oh, I just saw someone's comment, Fox. Yeah. Continue to process. That's why I say I'm not kidding. Like it is okay to not have all of this figured out, even in 6 months. It really is a process, especially when you got other things going on in your life and you're not like doing this full time. Like, of course, it's gonna take a minute to get all this going. Um, so now we're gonna jump a little bit into trademarks, patents, and copyrights. And I actually think this part is a little fun. Just because I think there's something really powerful about a creative person making sure that their shit is federally protected under the law. I don't know. That's just something that always got me where I'm just like, y'all ain't fit to take, our ideas or our concept. I got the law on my side, right? Yeah, I like that kind of stuff. So, and it's actually like once you really dive into it, it's actually pretty approachable. Trademarks don't cost that. They don't cost some crazy amount. They cost like a couple $100 usually. So that's where I would start this conversation. Anything I show you here around trademarks and dealing with the federal government, you can do as an individual. Some people immediately go out and get a lawyer to help them. That's fine. But I will say, with personal experience, no, you don't need a lawyer to do most of this stuff. But if you can't afford one, it's nice to it's nice to have their help. But no, it's not that complicated. I feel like it's harder getting a damn driver's license out of New York State than doing some of this. So when it comes to federal trademarks, what's nice about them is they protect you across all 50 states. So when you declare that your logo belongs to you, that means nobody in all 50 states has the right to reuse that logo without your permission, right? Something that became really relevant for my project, Black Girls World, is they do allow the trademarking of hashtags. So, some folks have, I mean, perhaps social media has moved on these days, but in a good chunk of the 2000s, some folks really launched whole livelihoods off of powerful hashtags. And so you can trademark a hashtag and say to, be able to say under the law, y'all can't just be putting that hashtag on any old t-shirt without my approval. I own it. It belongs to me. Yeah. Um, the other thing I wanted to highlight is your, oh, sorry. I keep clicking trying to highlight things. Um, the other thing I wanted to highlight is your business name is is separate from a federal trademark protection. So what I mean by that is just because you went to New York State and you filed for that limited liability company called Black Box Press, right? That does not mean you own the name Black Box Press. You do not. You just have a company called Black Box Press, but you don't own the name at that point. That's why trademarks become so important in partnership with your LLC. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to show you where the database is. Everything in regards to trademarks, patents, and copyrights is publicly accessible on the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office website. So these days, I'm sorry to say, I'm that one where someone will introduce themselves to me and tell me they got this cool business. And I'm like, yo, that business, what a cool idea. What a cool initiative. Then I might casually just get on my phone and see, have they trademarked that yet? Nope. They sure haven't. They should get on that. Just out of curiosity, like, because it kind of shows me like how far you might be in the maturity of establishing your business. So I'm gonna get out of this window and we're gonna spend a couple minutes here in the actual database. So, for example, let me go back here real quick. So I'm not kidding. Like, if you have a concept right now of what you think you want to call your press, or I know for some creatives too in the program, you've probably already been running your initiative for some time, but maybe you don't have the trademark yet. You can go to the public website right now, click on trademarks, search our trademark database, type in the name of either your current organization or what you plan, or hope to name your organization. See what comes up, see if anybody else has ownership of these phrases. So for example, here I have Kleenex, because I know just from business school, Kleenex has been a challenging one for them to maintain ownership over. um, And so within this, you can start to kind of brainstorm and see, is there anyone out there who's already using that name? If so, what industry are they in? Because trademarks are a funny thing. Basically, uh, for most intents and purposes, you can have something called the same name multiple times as long as it's in different industries. So, like for example, Kleenex is kind of synonymous with those tissues. Technically, if someone wanted to launch a restaurant called Kleenex, they might have a case. I mean, this company's pretty big, so they might fight you on it. But generally speaking, yeah, you could say, well, my Kleenex is a restaurant serving food, so we should both be able to exist and we should both be able to kind of establish ourselves without competing with one another, right? But it varies, right? A lot of times, right? Like companies really are kind of doing similar shit. So, for example, you see here, Kleenex has many trademarks. Some of them have outdated and died, is what the office will call them. Some of them are alive, and they have these registered for every product they offer, right? So that's something to keep in mind too. It's having a key trademark for your business and what your business is doing, but then as a secondary level to this, you might also end up having trademarks for every product that you consider um, exclusive to your business. So sometimes that comes up in the publishing space. Um, but I do have some examples here of my own. So I own a few things. One of them is Black Girls World, right? So this is what it looks like when you click into an active trademark. And let's just read some of the information here. So some of the information we see, because again, like all this shit is public. So I know sometimes they also say like you might want to think about the address of or just the contact, not just the address, the contact information in general of what this trademark is tied to, or even your LLC, because the LLCs are also publicly accessible databases, which means sometimes you can get hit with a lot of spam because businesses are they can see that you launched something and you know they want your business. But what we see here is that this is an active mark. We see that it's listed as a service mark. So that's why I mentioned here. A service mark is speaking more about what your business does in general, a service that it provides, right? Versus a solid trademark, which is like for a specific object or product, like vases, right? Say, okay, Black Rose World makes vases and sells vases on Etsy. I could have like a trademark just for vases in here. But as it stands, I just wanted something overarching for the service that Black Rose World provides. And here under goods and services is where they really start to break down what industry is this in regards to. So what you see here is quite a bit of detail because the idea is that you want to cover as much of what you do as possible so that no one can come, get in your face later and say, I'm suing you because you were competing directly with me with the same name, right? And it's just like, oh no, we are not the same. I made sure that, as you can see here, Black Girls World is legally able to provide services related to publishing books, publishing ebooks, publishing digital books, newspapers, magazines, right? Like it just gets more and more detailed as possible. Um, we even have, what does this say? Publishing of journals in the field of medicine, right? Like just whatever, anything we could think of in the field and industry of publishing, we would like to be covered for, just in case in the future something like that comes up or some kind of accusation comes up that we are somehow not allowed to be in these spaces. So sometimes a lawyer is good to help you with this piece of saying what classes of goods and services, it's like a whole catalog of classes. What classes of goods and services is my business truly rooted in? Um, but it depends. I feel like for the publishing one, it's not that complicated because publishing is very traditional. I have a second trademark though here for EdCircle. Now, EdCircle is a digital services business where we help corporations. This one was very hard to get approved. It took me about 18 months to get the government to sign off on this one with the help of an attorney. And a lot of the trouble we were having was with these newer concepts around video production and online education, the government kept coming back saying, "What are you talking about? We literally don't understand what you're referring to." And so they would come back and say, like, "Are you telling us that you create computers or something?" And we're like, "No. Where in our application are you even getting a claim that we create computers?" Right? But I felt like it was because these are newer terminology, newer industries where the government was really struggling with, like, the hell are you trying to do? I think when it comes to books, that's pretty straightforward, right? They kind of understand what that means. Uh, but so yeah, that comes up too of just like depending on what kind of business, what kind of services you're doing, they might struggle here and there with understanding what it is you're trying to do. Okay, and then some other things you see here, right? All our contact information. And then real quick, I'll just say a lot of things that are related to creating a business entity or a trademark have to do with publicly announcing that you're doing these things. I just thought it was fascinating. It's very old school. So even for it didn't matter which one it was for LLC or trademark, one of the requirements when you apply to get these things is you have to participate in publishing an announcement in a local newspaper of your county, letting everyone know. It almost looks like a wedding announcement, like a um, hear he, everyone. We would like to let you know that so and so, who is a resident of this county, has now launched a business called such and such. And the idea is that this is considered a period of opposition. So, what they mean by that is you are required to make a public announcement so that anyone out there who does potentially do the same kind of business or use the same kind of name has the right to reach out to the office and contest your application. Again, kind of like a wedding. I contest what is happening here. I have been using this trademark for the last 10 years and it should belong to me. So if people, if no one contacts them and no one reaches out to the office, that anyone out there in the world got a problem, that's when the office will sign off and approve your trademark or your LLC. Okay. Um, yeah, maybe I'm just a geek, but I thought this stuff was kind of fun. I was just like, oh, we gotta make like a public announcement. In what newspaper? What new? So for me, it ended up being kind of an adventure. I live in Westchester. I was like, Westchester got a newspaper? Like, but yeah, it turns out like it's a whole lucrative business because lots of people launch new businesses all the time and new trademarks all the time. There's whole newspapers out here where that's pretty much all they do is get paid to make these public announcements on behalf of entrepreneurs like us, right? So that's just a quick example. But yeah, definitely use this website. They got a lot of resources and stuff. And it's like, it's okay, again, like if you want to pursue the help of an attorney, but you don't have to. You just you gotta take time. Take the time to look into it. Um, the other thing I would say on that note too, yeah, we're almost done. We're almost ready for Q&A. The other thing I would say too about procuring services from other people, right? So you're nervous if you are nervous about taxes, or you're nervous about this LLC stuff or the trademarks and shit, and you like, man, let me get an attorney. I do think like my recommendation for sure would be don't let anybody pressure you into doing something you're not comfortable with, right? Don't let anybody tell you your business, right? It's your vision, it's your project. So if you're shopping around, talking to different folks, trying to get a sense of how they can help you, definitely take it slow. and don't feel like you just gotta rush into something to get it done. Because I've met many a person over the years uh, trying to sell me on something, right? Where they might have presented trademarking as like one of the most difficult things a person could ever attempt, and that it's going to cost thousands of dollars. And it's just like, I took the time to look into it, and it actually costs like $175 per trademark. And so if it only costs that much, why am I giving you $2,000 to do what? So do your research, and yeah, don't let anyone pressure you into things that don't sit right with you, or telling you to do something with your business that you don't feel is within alignment of what your business was about. um Digital tools. So real quick, I think I might just put together some kind of email or resources after this. But these are just some digital tools I've leveraged over the years that help me with all these different initiatives. QuickBooks for the self-employed is very helpful. You can tie that integration into your bank account so that any transactions happening in your bank account, appear in QuickBooks, and then that way you can export out your tax documents from QuickBooks without having to do any back end digging or research on what the heck you did with your money for the past 12 months. It's already fully tracked and ready for reporting purposes, right? Stripe is a common tool, but I do feel like it has additional features beyond what people usually think of it for, as far as little online shopping and things like that. Stripe these days can be just as detailed as QuickBooks, as far as like really tracking more elaborate subscriptions or invoices for different products and services you might be offering. For e-commerce, I recommend Squarespace or Shopify. If you're nervous about the e-commerce space, and it's a doozy, right? Like, I mean, it is pretty it shouldn't be this complicated, but it can get complicated, right? As far as, okay, I got the website, I got the product, I got pop-up boxes appearing, I got coupons, I got sales, I got social media campaigns, email campaigns, I got all this shit. If if you if you want to take your time kind of learning about all of that, I recommend Etsy. I feel like Etsy handles a lot of the heavy lifting for you if you're just starting to learn about all the different things you can customize when it comes to online selling. So they'll take a lot of weight off your shoulders, and then once you feel ready to go out on your own, I would recommend moving from Etsy to something like Squarespace. But everybody's different. I think it just depends on, like, how much time you're looking to spend in e-commerce, selling your books, selling your wares on in the digital space. Because for Black Girls World, a lot of what we do is in person. At the end of the day, we prefer it that way. We're like specifically there to be in person. So it just depends. There's this thing called Toggle that's good for invoicing if you're doing any time-based services. So if you want to bill somebody for something you help them with, every Wednesday for 2 hours, Toggle's a good tool for that kind of tracking and invoicing. ShipStation is what I recommend if you need mailing labels for your online e-commerce store. Um, Asana can help with project tracking. And then lastly, I do still use MailChimp. There's plenty of competitors out there to MailChimp as far as email marketing, but I feel like it's still one of the most straightforward platforms. Again, because all these platforms are offering a ton of additional services, and I think just overwhelming people with all these other things they can do. So it's like, just give me the damn email. Um, so MailChimp is available, but I also still recommend Gmail for alias addresses. I mean, I'm sure some folks have already tapped into this, right? But like, I know I personally have like 8 Gmail accounts for different things. And then within those accounts, I might have multiple aliases. so that each inbox can field multiple requests from all these different initiatives that we're doing, right? So, we'll try and send out a list of these things. And then partnerships. Um, so partnerships come up, right? I feel like New York is a collaborative place, right? You doing something, your friend is doing something. Maybe you want to partner on an event, you want to collaborate on a photo shoot. All that is well and fine. Just make sure you have something on paper to protect yourself. And if they say something about how they ain't never had to put none on paper, then you definitely need to put something on paper just to protect yourself down the road. I'm sure we've all seen on social, or I'm assuming, maybe I'm over assuming, but I'll be seeing some shit on social media as far as um, what was originally agreed upon between two parties. And the next thing you know, it's like 20 Instagram stories about how somebody took somebody's image without their permission, or you didn't tell me you were going to use my voice like that on the podcast. It gets wild out here. So have stuff documented so that everyone's on the same page about what it is we're trying to do. Okay. And it don't have to be elaborate, right? It don't have to be 10 pages, but you need something, right? Just something. Yeah, but plan it out, take your time, and set some goals, right? Um, and those goals can be based in how much money is coming in, season over season. It could be based on your time commitment, because like I'm saying, I know folks got other things going on. You might not be able to do this full time, right? So, as you try and get through establishing a business, doing trademarks and stuff, it could take some years, months to years, because how much time you actually have to commit to this particular thing. And so it's also okay to just set goals year over year, but you'll get there, over time. So hope that helps. We covered a lot, but I think we're ready for questions. Questions. Anybody got questions over anything we've said thus far? And no question is a dumb question either, right? Like anything.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I've had a LLC established, I'm gonna say a year, coming up on 2 years in February next year.
Mhm.
I still have not um done the publication part, like where you have to like send it to a newspaper in like 6 weeks.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to know if you knew if not having that part completed yet kind of impends on any of your um business operations. I mean, I haven't done anything yet. I haven't brought in any income. I haven't operated yet, but I plan to next year.
It does impinge on the strength of your liability protection is the
Okay.
easiest way I can say it, right? Like, I don't think, and sorry, I just put in the chat. Oh, hold on. I did not put in the chat. Hold on one second. How much does it cost to file an LLC? I don't remember for New York State. It couldn't have been more than like, I want to say it was like $300. I don't know. If someone else remembers, feel free to put it in the chat. But I know for sure we're not talking about thousands of dollars. We're talking about a few $100s for these things. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah. So your question about not doing that public announcement part, yeah, what I've seen is that it just makes it a little soft. So like if you suddenly found yourself in some kind of lawsuit, that's
Mm-hmm.
when they'll uncover that and be like, I don't know if this is, truly standing like it should be. So,
Mm.
that's why I'm just like, is it urgent? Not necessarily, but I wouldn't just leave it hanging out there forever. No, because when you want to actually use that LLC and pull on it, it might not be strong enough to stand on its own. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Yes, I see another one in the chat that says, how do you decide what to charge for and what to give away?
Ooh, that's one of my favorite questions. Honestly, it could be its own workshop. But like similar to like how a freelancer calculates their rates, I would say you gotta start with like a full assessment of your expenses. So let me go back to where's that list? Like, yeah, even this, yeah, you gotta start with your expenses. How much money do you like have to operate this business? Right? Like, what do you need to come in for this business to have a good month or have a good quarter to cover all of the expenses that you're dealing with? So you keep that in mind, the tax piece, right? We tend to try and account for forthcoming taxes in how we're pricing things. I didn't even get into sales tax. Apology. Sales tax is in there too. And then also, right, the overhead of if we're talking about publishing a book, how much is it going to cost per book to have it properly printed, packaged, and shipped? So once you account for all of that, then you kind of have an idea of what your pricing has to be at minimum, and then where you might be willing to wiggle a little bit. For example, if we go to the Black Girls World website real quick to our store, everyone has different missions, right? So some of our pricing kind of speaks on that. I specifically wanted to make sure our most recent zine was accessible as possible to people. So in order to keep pricing low, we specifically went to a printer that could run off what we needed via newsprint, right? And that brought it down to what, like, I want to say it cost us like $5 per book to be printed. Then we're thinking about how it's usually $4.75 to $5 to ship a single order. So that's about, $9-10, right? And so in the end, we're only making a few dollars off of each book sold in return. We okay with that, right? We just wanted to make sure it got into as many hands as possible. Versus something like this t-shirt, 1975. That's because we use Printful. I think it's Printful. Printful. Some of y'all might be familiar with Printful, but this is like a drop ship service, right? So anytime somebody orders one of these shirts, Printful gets a notification to make one of those shirts and send it to the person. So I don't have no boxes of shirts here in my house. Because of that, we find Printful's pricing to be a little high. So then therefore the pricing of this shirt is a little high. I feel like that's the trade-off. If I had probably gone to a local New York shop and gotten the t-shirts printed in person and had the box here in my house, I probably wouldn't have to charge that kind of price, right? I might be able to bring it down to $15 a shirt, but I got my reasons for why. Okay, so maybe the reasons is this damn cat. I was just like, what's the point of having all that merchandise in my house? These damn cats gonna be running all over it. So trade-offs, right? But like that's just a quick example of how pricing can be impacted. But yeah, I would start with your expenses, and then that way too that like you have your reasons for why things are these different numbers, right? And why they have to be these numbers. Yeah, like this one's a high, like $29 because the Printful printing fee is so high to get these things printed, right? Did that answer your question? Hope soon. Anything else? Let me see. Okay, you're welcome, Rhonda.
I have another question.
Yes.
Um, I plan on funding my business with my 9 to 5 until I don't have to anymore. But I did want you to speak more to being anti-credit.
Oh yeah. And don't do it. Is there a specific use case or something you've seen like being advertised that is grabbing your attention or something?
Well, for me, it's the project that I want to do is kind of urgent to me, and I don't have the upfront cash to do it, but I strongly believe in it. And I just feel like, you know, having the credit allows me to execute my project without, putting my own self in the red. It kind of gives me like a buffer in between. Um, and again, within reason, like not something astronomical like 30,000, but it allows me to um, just execute my project without having to go into my personal expenses.
I mean, it's your personal choice. I would say, do you have, my question would be, do you have any evidence for yourself of successfully selling uh, your art previously like this, right? Like, do you have a record of creating something and successfully selling it and getting the revenue that you wanted and planned for out of it?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because if you don't, then I would say leave that credit alone. Like I would say wait until you do have the right amount of money for like if it's that important to you, right? Because it's that push and pull, right? Like we can chase after the true vision that we had and wait until we have that money ready to execute on it the way we want it, or we could tinker with the original vision and bring it down to the budget we do have right now.
Mm-hmm.
But to take that risk that we're going to promise to give this money back to somebody without evidence that this will sell,
Mm-hmm.
it's I don't recommend it. I really don't. And just for an example, a lot of us, I've been running around the city for some time. I remember I think it was 20, might have been 2019, 2018, 2019. I had a table at the New York Art Book Fair that Printed Matter does.
Mm-hmm.
The stress at the zine tent area where all the zinesters were, I mean, people were freaking out as far as everyone who had a table knew they had done things to prepare for that festival that were out of their financial comfort zone, right? They had gone out and said, let me get extra zines and print extra stickers and do all this stuff to make sure I'm ready for this kind of fair. And what proceeded to happen was a lot of toxic overworking, where when you would check in with a Zinster at that event, they would say, I'm not taking bathroom breaks, I'm not taking a lunch break, I'm not stepping away from this table, this whole goddamn fair, because I need to make my money back from what I spent to get into this room. Right? Like it was so intense. So by the end, like people were the creatives upset. They were upset, overworked, stressed out, and many of them did not make the money they thought they were gonna make at the New York Art Book Fair. Right? So like it's stressful. More recently though, I feel like folks have been talking about this issue because in the last couple months, I had a table at the Brooklyn Art Book Fair where I felt like they chose a different location to do the fair than they had in previous years. The turnout of like who was actually coming to the fair was pretty low, if you ask me. It wasn't typically who we would see coming to that fair. So I did not make many sales. I was there for like 3 days from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like 8 hours each day. And I only made like $175, which was crazy. I was just like, yeah, I don't feel like the location was right for this. It was very hard to get to the location where the fair was. All that to say, when the fair was over, I got contacted by the organizers who said we were budgeting and planning that everyone who had a table during this fair made at least $400. They said, did you make $400? I said, no, I did not. So they actually cut me a check for the remaining amount and gave it to me and said, we're sorry to hear that you didn't at least hit the minimum, but we will cover you for at least that minimum $400 you should have been able to make at this fair.
Wow. Um, thank you.
just just as an example of like I guess I'm just saying that to say like that's why we need to be careful and make sure that you are not getting into a credit situation where you gonna promise to give somebody some money you don't have right now. Oh, don't get me started on them student loans because I still got plenty of those too. So it's just like that's why you just got to be careful with what you're doing. But I hope that helps.
That did.
At least as you think about what to do and the pros and cons of these different options.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And I know too, like some of our other lectures, I'm not sure if you were able to attend, but they also covered things like crowdfunding and things like that, like, creating GoFundMes or Kickstarters or doing pre-order sales. So,
Mhm.
and just making like really good, like, let's say book prototypes before actually making the production to do pre-order sales or things like that to try to get outside funding before you start the project to use that money for it.
That's a good point. Pre-orders are very strong. Yes, that's a good point. Last few zines we've done have had pre-order phases that helped us pay to get it printed. That's true. Very true. Um, Anything else on any of these topics? No question is a bad question. You know, whatever y'all curious about.
I do have a question regarding the bank accounts that you were bringing up earlier when you were saying even if you're not creating an LLC just yet, but making sure keeping your finances separate on like a different account. Is that an account that would need to be opened in a specific way for a business, or is that just like it can be like a account that was previously personal but now switched just because in your mind you're only using it for that? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that excuse me, starting with a fresh, clean account is usually better than messing with a pre-existing account, but it's not life or death stuff. It's just all in the name of trying to keep your tracking in line so you don't get lost. Because even for me, I've gotten lost, right? Like think of Amazon, right? Like you're trying to keep track of all your Amazon purchases. Well, we know some of those are going to be personal and some of those are going to be for the business. And the Amazon receipt is not necessarily going to help me figure out which time was for me for the business. But if I have a debit card for the business and a debit card for me, it's easier for me to track when we pulled which one out for that Amazon order. So that's pretty much the way I would frame it. It's just like make sure it's a checking account with its own debit card. Um, and also make sure that it's one of those FDIC insured banks, because I've been using, is Novo on here? No. There are certain banks that specialize in helping small businesses. So Novo is one of them. I've been using them for the past year. I'm not too happy with them right now. But they did have a lot of integrations with Stripe and QuickBooks and Square. So that's why I kind of had given them a try. And one of their strong suits is you get a physical debit card and a digital debit card, so that, with all the things you might be doing with your business, you can run all your expenses or subscriptions or whatever pretty quickly with them. But it's not a requirement. If you want to use Chase, Ally Bank, or one of the other banks, that's fine too. What else would I say? Other than that, like, everyone's just so different in how they manage money, right? Like, so even before I really got into business banking, I don't know. My sister and I were kind of known for having just multiple bank accounts to help with our budgeting. So instead of trying to do like a lot of budgeting on paper, we'll just open a new checking account. And everybody's different. But what that means is, like, I have like a dozen checking accounts for different things. It's just one way to keep track of your money and what you're trying to do with it. Um, like, I even have an account that's just for PayPal subscriptions. So because I didn't like that feeling of going into my check-in and being like, okay, this how much money I got. I'm happy with this balance right now. And then like an hour later, it's like Netflix subscription. And it's like, damn, you should have never been in that account. I like the balance. Leave that balance alone, right? So yeah, that's just one way to do it.
Thank you.
I see some questions. What is the best and simplest platform for selling things online? I would say Etsy. If you really don't want to do a lot of like heavy lifting and customization yourself, I feel like Etsy's the easiest one for quick, like, out of the box um service, where it doesn't take that much information to just like open an account with them and start posting your products. They take a lot of the responsibility, right? Communicating with the customer, and they deal with the shipping and everything, right? Like, so it takes a lot of pressure off of you to do Etsy. But I just say, like, when you're ready, you can jump over to Shopify or Squarespace if you're ready to take on more personal customization of, like in Squarespace, it'll say, what do you want the email to say? Like, word for word, if someone were to order from you, what do you want that email to say in response? Right. So it could take some time to build all that out if you're not ready. Yeah. How do you make most of your sales in person or online? What drives? Yeah, that's a good question. So most of Black Girls World's business is in person, and there's a reason for that. Um, Number one, I do digital shit for my day job, so I ain't trying to do more digital shit after 5 o'clock. But the other thing is too, it really speaks to our audience. So as you think about your audience, like, we've definitely self-described our mission, and what we do is for young women of color, right? Like, we're really trying to interface with young people, and expose them to alternative music, right? Especially, we had that lived experience that, being like little girls or teenage girls, people were constantly telling us what we should be interested in and what we shouldn't be interested in. And we're just like, I should have the freedom to explore whatever I bump into, right? And so we really like in-person events where, we got all the stickers and everything out, and little kids will come up, right, grabbing at things. Little girls will come up, parents, right, will come up saying, "What is all of this?" And the idea for us, that I love when I know I'm in the I know I'm in the right event, is when kids come running up to the table and they say, "I see myself in all the little illustrations. It's like you drew a picture of me," right? I'm like, yeah, we're where we're supposed to be. This is our target audience right here. That's why I mentioned like trying to keep our pricing low, because it's not really intended, like these zines are not intended for some big adult audience. They're meant for like kids and stuff who, just got a little cash on them. We offer digital payments, PayPal and all that, but we still kind of assuming the people running to our table are not old enough to be having no PayPal account or Apple Pay at this point. So we still handle a lot of cash too. Um, but every project is different, every business is different. So it is important to think about your audience and where they are. I know from experience, it could take a long time to find them. Like I'm not gonna act like I knew where the kids were when we started. We had to try the different fairs, different events, different things. The funniest one I ever got invited to was somebody was doing a 420 zine fair in Brooklyn one year. I didn't know what 420 meant. So they had contacted me and been like, "Well, why didn't you use our original flyer to let people know about the event? You like redrew it for Black Girls World." And I was like, "I didn't think it was a big deal. You guys had like some weird stuff on your flyer." And they're like, "This is like about weed, right?" And I go, "No, what are you talking about?" I said, maybe this isn't a good fit for us because we're a family organization. We support family kids coming to see our zine. So I said, "I don't think I can come to this 420 event. No offense, but like, we love hardcore music, metal music, but we're straight edge. We don't believe in substances, alcohol, smoking, none of that. And yeah, it's kind of supposed to be a family affair for us, but everybody different. So um yeah, I think it helps to kind of know what you're about and what your mission is, so that you can align yourself with events and things that are on the same page as you, and then everybody has a good time. When you're not on the same page, shit be kicking off sometimes. Okay. Thank you, Fox. Yeah, I wish I listen. There's a lot I don't know. Like I said, I don't drink alcohol. There's plenty I don't know about that. That people be asking me about. Anything else? I think we're almost at time. It's okay if not. I'll be around. I'm free to email if you have other questions. And like I said, I'm gonna try and put a list together of some resources for everybody. But I hope this was helpful, at least as you think about all the different kind of functions that are available out there to protect yourself. Um, and like I said, you might not have it all at once, but just like as you keep going and keep locking in these different pieces, it just continues to secure what you're trying to do and ensure that nobody can take it from you. I feel like that's really important. And you out here trying to share something with the world. Last thing you want to see is something come along and sabotage the whole damn thing and your personal finances. That ain't good.
Well, thank you so, so, so much, Christina. I know there's lots and lots of excited and thankful comments going on in the chat right now, and I just want to echo all of those because this was such a great presentation, and I'm definitely so excited by it. And it seems like so many other people are too. So thank you so much for taking the time to give this lecture.
Thank you. Hope y'all have a good weekend and just keep getting out there and working on your projects.
Yes, have a great weekend, everyone. All right, bye everybody.